So let's jump in. Let's talk about part one, SEO tips and tools. So one of the big things around SEO is some of the nerdy stuff, the little bit more technical stuff. And I want to go through it because it's very important and it's hugely beneficial to you to understand this, even if it's maybe a little bit on the nerdy side. First of all, page titles, heading tags, meta descriptions. I'm going to go into each one of these in a little bit more detail, but I just want to make sure that we get through all of these as time goes on. Meta descriptions, huge. Site speed becomes important in the last year or so. The mobile-friendly version of your website or responsiveness of your website, important. And then we're going to talk a little bit about content and blogs. I'm also going to share some tools with you, such as Google Search Console, how to get an SEO score, a tool that I like called HotJar, another one called Screaming Frog, and we'll talk a little bit about those. So let's start with the page titles. The page title is a tag that goes behind the scenes, and it typically it's not something that you see in the code when a website comes up, but it is something that you will see when you're browsing a site. So first of all, the definition, it's an HTML element that specifies the title of a page. Title tags are displayed in the search engine result pages as the clickable headline for a given result and are important for usability, SEO, and social sharing. So what does that mean, and what does that look like in the real world? Well, here is an example of some title tags. So what we see here in the purple is the actual title tag. And this is something that you can control on your website for every page. So when we talk about, I've talked about keywords in past webinars, and I mentioned earlier the top 81 window treatment keywords that I'm going to send you. So these different keywords need to coordinate to specific pages on your website that are about these particular things. So for example, if you have a page on shades and shutters, then you would have a title tag that basically says shades and shutters built in Memphis or wherever it happens to be. So you're going after some title tags. You're going after maybe words like custom, custom made, or affordable, depending on what your target market is and how you want to portray yourself. But having specific title tags on every single page really tells the search engines what this particular page is about, and it also shows up in the search engine results. So whatever you have here in the blue is what people are first of all going to use to decide, does that match what I just searched for, and am I going to click on that result or not? Secondly, we're going to talk about heading tags. Now, heading tags are very similar to title tags, and a lot of times they're actually the same. A lot of businesses just use whatever their title tag is. They also use what they call their H1 tag. And a heading tag is, again, an HTML element, and it usually it emphasizes some text on the page. It's usually the largest text on the page, and it goes in order of importance. So every page should have one H1 tag. It could have multiple H2 tags, which are less important, but they're good for breaking up sections of your site. And this is really a good thing to have when it comes to blogs. So your blog title would be your H1, and then it may be broken into sections of how-tos or whatever it happens to be. Each of those would be an H2 tag that kind of breaks up the different sections. So that's kind of how they work. But H1 and your title tag are by far they give the most weight to what the search engines think about your site. So having those optimized with keywords in the right places, it's very important that you have those there. So here's an example. This is 8 ways to get Google Plus and Yelp reviews. So this is the H1 tag for this particular article, and then of course the content is below that. It's usually just the biggest thing on the page. It's usually the title of the article or the title of that page. If it's a product page, draperies, like I said, draperies, custom draperies made here in Memphis or something like that. Obviously, the H1s are the most important, and then they get less important as they go on. In fact, most people rarely use 4s, 5s, and 6s. We don't often even use H3s on sites, but definitely 1s and 2s for sure. All right, next up is meta descriptions. So interestingly, meta descriptions are not directly an SEO factor. And what I mean by that is they do not influence the search engines to rank your page higher than another page, but they are very important to your site. And the reason that they're important is because they show up in the search results again. So let me show you. We talked earlier about this being the red, or the blue purple there being the title tag. And then what's below that is actually your meta description. So while it doesn't influence the search engines to rank you, it definitely influences humans on whether or not to click on your result or not. So if you don't have a meta description tag written for every page on your site, what Google tends to do is just grab some random text from your site. So if the first text on your site is your navigation, your home and about us and your services and your products, then that's what's going to show up in this meta description area. So it's a missed opportunity because nobody's going to want to click on that unless they specifically have your brand already in mind. Most cases they're going to be typing in window treatments location, right? So they need to be compelled to click on your result over the other ones that are there. And a very well written meta description can actually get more clicks than even maybe somebody that's a little higher up in the search results, because it's well written, it compels them, it matches what they searched for, those sort of things. So having those meta descriptions is very, very important. And we're going to talk about Screaming Frog, a tool that you can use to kind of pull some of those out. So we'll circle back around to this in kind of an interesting way. All right, next let's talk about site speed. So probably, let's say 2 years ago now, Google came out and said, one of the things we're going to start watching for is how fast your page loads. And every page, not just your home page, but every page on your site. And we're going to use that information as part of our ranking. So if your site loads really slow, if you're on a server that, let's say GoDaddy server, for instance, they're probably the worst offenders when it comes to site speed. But if you're on a hosting program that doesn't have quick servers and your page takes seconds or 5 or 8 or 10 seconds to load, it's very possible that Google's going to say, well, we're not going to show this high in our ranking results because it's a bad user experience to our searchers who are their clients, their customers at the end of the day. So site speed is very important. And the other thing one of the things you can do is just go to Google and type in page speed insights. So this is a free tool from Google, and they will actually give you a number from 0 to 100 how well your website does when it comes to page speed. So in this example, they scored a 74 on mobile and an 8 top. So the other interesting thing, and we're going to talk a little bit about mobile in a minute here, but the interesting thing is they actually judge your site depending on how fast it loads on mobile devices, which include tablets and cell phones. And then they give a separate, different score for people loading on a desktop. So very important that both versions of your site load quickly. And the other really cool thing here, as you can see, there's once again some nerdy stuff, but some things that you should fix. Eliminate some JavaScript, CSS, some things. So when you run your report, these are things you can give to your web person and say, we really need to fix these so our site comes up faster in the search engines. All right, next, mobile friendliness. I mentioned this earlier. Another thing that Google did probably 2 years ago now is they said if your site is not mobile friendly, it may not rank in the search engines. Now, since then, they've actually taken that one step further and built two separate indexes, one for desktop and one for mobile. So if your website is ranking well in desktop and it has a desktop version, which every website pretty much does, but you don't have a mobile version of your site, it's not mobile friendly, it's very possible that you won't even show up in the search results if somebody is doing a search for you specifically on a mobile device. So you really want to make sure that your website is mobile friendly so that you can show up in both Google's, I guess you could call it, both versions, both indexes. This again is a free tool. It's inside the Google Search Console, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a couple minutes. But you can just type in mobile friendly test in Google and you'll get the link to come right up to this. Then you just plug in your website there and it'll either come up and say this page is mobile friendly or it isn't. And if it isn't, then you definitely need to get on that and get that fixed as soon as possible. Also, blogs/content creation. One of the biggest things that business owners miss out an opportunity on is they build the brochure website and they don't keep it updated and they don't add new content to it. And by far, this is probably one of the biggest missing pieces for business owners. The fact that every time Google comes back to look at your website, it's grown because there's a new blog or there's a new piece of content, there's a new video, there's something new. And every time they come back, it's just growing and growing and growing. These are really strong, good signals for the search engines when it comes to where should they rank you in, as compared to some of your competitors. So if your competitors are blogging once a month or not blogging at all, then starting to put out articles around top 7 window treatment trends for spring 2019. That would be a great blog to write, and 800 to 1,200 words. Talk about some different things. Use your H2 tags in there, like I said. Kind of break it up so it's easier to read. But that is a great article that can also be shared on social media, things of that sort, to bring back more traffic. At the same time, you're building more traffic, you're building more content for your site, so it's growing larger. This is huge. I don't want to talk about this in just a short amount of time, but if there's one thing you could do quickly, it would be to start building some different content. And then, of course, sharing that on some different social media channels as it makes sense. So I want to talk about a couple quick SEO tools. I mentioned those earlier, but I want to go through them a little bit more in detail. First of all is the Google Search Console. It used to be called Google Webmaster Tools, and I think if you still do a search in Google for Google Webmaster Tools, this Search Console will come up. But the Search Console is basically some information that you can get behind the scenes about your website. And basically, you're kind of peeking into Google servers in a way and seeing some different information about what searches are people typing in that your page is coming up as one of the results. Whether somebody clicks on it or not, just the fact that it came up in the results, they will share that information with you. Here are some different keywords that people typed in but didn't click on your result. So there might be some opportunity there. And this is a free tool. It also gives you some information on your keyword ranking. So where you ranked over here in position for that particular key phrase. You can also look at countries, pages, devices, lots of different information here to see where your website ranks in the overall scheme of things. The other thing that it lets you do is it lets you submit a sitemap. And a sitemap is a file that is written in XML, which is a programming language. Most website systems can build one of those for you, so it's not like you have to go program this. But the sitemap can actually be submitted to Google Search Console, and it is what it sounds like. It is a list of every page on your site. Here's a link to our homepage. Here's a link to our products page. Here's a link to our services page. Here's a link to our city page or whatever, some sub-city pages, things like that. you can actually give that file to Google inside the Search Console. And what they'll do is they'll be able to then index all the pages. They'll see how many are submitted. They'll see how many they've currently indexed. And then they'll go get the rest of those pages and index those as well. So this is a lot better than in the past where Google would have to come to your website and basically start stumbling through your site to find all these different links and then index them that way. It's just a shortcut for them. Very easy to create, easy to hand over. Then you know all your pages are being indexed, which is obviously a good thing. And once again, this is a free part of Google Search Console or Google Webmaster Tools. I should also mention here that Bing has a Webmaster Tools software as well. So even though I'm specifically talking about Google, the same things are true for Bing as well. So I would also go claim my website on Bing and make sure that they have a sitemap and see what kind of information that they have there. One interesting thing about Bing is it tends to skew a little bit older. A lot of the older folks will get a computer which has Internet Explorer or Microsoft Edge now, and Bing as the default search, and they just won't change that. So there are some advantages to making sure that you're also listed in Bing, even though it tends to only be 8–10% of any search results. Not a lot of traffic there, but it does skew a little bit older. So consider that when you're if that matches your demographic. Secondly, HotJar or HotJar Insights. That's at HotJar.com, and HotJar does a couple cool things that I've used for some of our clients. One of the really cool things that it does is what we call a heat map of your site. And basically it will actually watch your website for a specific period of time or a specific number of users, and then it will tell you where they clicked on your website, and it will turn it into a really cool kind of heat map like we see here. So this is a great example of understanding what people are clicking on, what things people are not clicking on, and then adjusting your website accordingly to move those more clicked items further up towards the top of your menu, further up on the page, things of that sort. So very cool little tool. As you can see here, a lot of people clicking on products and then clicking on whatever these first two results are in the little drop-down menu for this client. So very cool to see how they all kind of work together. The other thing that's interesting, not a lot of people clicking on the helpful design articles, which is his blog. And in fact, we use this information to remove this item from this top menu and moved it down to the footer area. People are not clicking on it. There's no sense in having it up there cluttering up some of the other things that we know people are clicking on. The other thing that HotJar does is it actually lets you make recordings. So you can actually record people as they visit your website, and it's maybe a little creepy, but it's kind of like standing over their shoulders, and you can actually watch somebody cruising out on your website, going to this page, going to this page, and a lot of times what's really cool is if you have a page that has content on it, you can actually see them move their mouse as they're reading it, so you can tell they're reading it, but it lets you kind of record people and see where did they stop, what was the last point, what was the thing that made them not go any further, can I tell that they were looking for a specific piece of information. So some really neat things around the recordings, and you can see some other things here. It also breaks it out into device type, so I can see the heat map specifically by desktop, by tablet, by mobile device, and see how they interact with these different types of devices and my website. The next tool I'm going to show you is Screaming Frog. This is a tool that you actually go download and install on your computer. It is free for websites that are smaller than 500 pages, which is probably most window treatment companies are a lot smaller than that. So what you can do is, I'm actually going to pull it up here. Let's see, where is my screen? There it is, right there. And then what you can do is you can type in some sort of a URL here. So I'll put in Sunshine Drapery, since that's the one we were using as an example earlier. And then what it actually does is it actually goes and finds every page on your site, and then it gives you some interesting information about that page. So you can see it's already almost finished crawling the site. I'm going to blow this up here. So one of the really cool things is you can export all of your HTML pages, which is all of the pages on your site. And then let me just put this in downloads here. All right, so now what I can do is I can actually see, let's see, this page here, and then I can find out some different information about that page. Well, here's my title. Here's the meta description for that page. Does it have an H1 tag? Yes, here's the H1 tag. It does have an H2 tag. It actually has a couple of those. So I can get some really cool information here about this page, and does it have the correct H1s, does it not? The other thing, the site in general, or the entire website, it will tell you, all right, we crawled 464 pages, 143 of them were HTML, so there were other things. There were pictures, there were JavaScripts, there were CSS files, so all these other pieces. What we're really interested in is the HTML pieces, and then we'll actually give you information on title tags. So 121 title tags in total. None of them had a page where there was no title tag. 6 pages had duplicates. So 6 pages on this particular website have a duplicate of another page, and we can see those right here now. So just to go change these different title tags and fix those. It also tells you if there's some over the amount of characters that they suggest, if they're below the amount of characters they suggest. These are huge missed opportunities here to maybe put some more content, some more keywords, things of that sort behind the scenes. Meta description, same way. Pages that had missing meta descriptions, so these need to be added, these need to be fixed. Pages that had duplicate meta descriptions, and again, if they were over the limit, under the limit. Same thing for H1. Are there any pages where they're missing? Are there any pages where maybe they're duplicated? Things of that sort. So Screaming Frog is a fantastic tool that really gives you a lot of different information about your site, and then some more in-depth information where you can go fix things quickly.